Joining us now is Republican Congressman from the 4th District of Virginia. Always great to have you with us, Congressman Forbes. How are you?
I'm doing great, John. How about you?
Doing fantastic. Before we get into this national politics, I want to go to Chesapeake, Virginia, where John Cosgrove, Delegate John Cosgrove, is a candidate for state senate in District 14. That'll be decided on Thursday night in a so-called Republican firehouse primary. And I know that you have made a public endorsement of John Cosgrove. Why?
Well, I've known for a long time. He's been in my Sunday school class, and I have watched him. He started the Congressional Prayer Caucus in Virginia to protect religious freedom and religious liberties, and he's had a lot of experience in the House of Delegates. Seems to be set and ready to take on that responsibility that Senator Blevins will give up. As you know, Senator Blevins is a wonderful, wonderful man, great role model for so many individuals, and he's retiring for health reasons. And so it'll be an interesting race, and anyone who wants to be a part of that can come out on Thursday night and cast their vote. I think it's between 5 o'clock and 8, but I could be wrong on that, John, and that will be a great opportunity for them to participate in the process.
All right, should be interesting, and it's always these canvases are tough because you got to figure out where to go, and then there's only certain times, so it is 5 to 8 p.m. If you want to figure out where it is, you can go to the Republican Party of Virginia, rpv.com. You can also go to johncosgrove.com. There'll be information there. Congressman, I want to get to the Syrian situation. We all understand now that President Obama's statement about a red line, there's some evidence that the Assad regime may have deployed chemical weapons, but now some people are walking it back, saying it might have come from the rebels, cast confusion and doubt in the situation. We've got the Israeli army has now lined up tanks 5 miles from the Syrian border. What do you think our action should be now?
Well, John, I think if we could roll back to when the president put the red line, I think it's very, very concerning when you put red lines out, because red lines should mean red lines. And
right.
If it's a red line and somebody crosses it and you don't back it up, you become kind of a toothless tiger in the future on foreign policy. And as you know, that red line, the president had pulled it out, I think, about 600 days ago. I think, though, having said that, I think there's two things that we need to draw from this. One is for all of those people on the left who so criticized George Bush because, he was concerned that Iraq may have weapons of mass destruction. Now we have had a decade to study that, look at it, and we still have questions about whether they have used chemical weapons, what kind of chemical weapons they have. This is not a science. Sometimes it's very, very difficult. The problem if you get it wrong, you're talking about a lot of lives that can be lost. The other thing that I would suggest, John, though, is I have been more measured in how we deal with Syria than I think some of my other colleagues up here in Congress has been. We are so stretched out now militarily. We have made enormous cuts in our military that I think have reduced our capabilities quite a bit. Mm-hmm. And I think we have to be very, very careful when we get engaged in any conflict. I think the thing that could easily trigger this would be if Syria and Israel begin to clash. Mm-hmm. We can't let that spill over into a regional conflict that could have just catastrophic consequences, that are there. But I think it's something we have to monitor. I am not for us going in and policing every nation in the world on their internal battles.
Right.
But as Syria becomes a threat to one of our allies, i.e. Israel, or a threat to us, I think that red line has to be enforced.
Now, as we understand it, when the Israeli government bombed certain institutions over the weekend on Syrian soil, we understand that the U.S. government was not made aware of that. Do you have a problem with that?
No, I don't think that the Israelis have to inform us of everything they do. I don't think they should inform us of everything they do any more than we inform them of everything we do. I think we have an incredibly close relationship with Israel. We have a close relationship in sharing security information and intelligence information. I think we'll continue to have that. But Israel has a right to defend itself, and these missiles were headed, in their opinion, to Lebanon, as I understand it,
right.
And perhaps being used by Hezbollah to kill innocent people. We know that's not a threat. They have been doing it for a long period of time. If we had weapons that were moving to the border in Canada or the border in Mexico, I don't think we would feel we had to get permission from anybody else. I think we would try to stop those weapons from getting there and injuring our citizens.
We're with Congressman Randy Forbes, Republican of the 4th District of Virginia. This is the John Fredericks Show. Congressman, let's get to the Benghazi hearings. They're going to start tomorrow. What are some of the things in that keep you awake at night?
Well, John, I think it's not so much what we'll hear in the hearings, but what we've already heard. I was last night with some key people on that committee who have gone through all the information. I've looked at a lot of it. I've heard in some of the hearings. The things that we seem very clear about now is the fact that our government, the State Department, covered up what took place at Benghazi, which is atrocious for us in the first place. And I can't imagine why we don't have a greater outrage of that. It's very clear that the CIA assessment about a terrorist attack was doctored, and it was doctored intentionally for some reason. Second thing we know is that these sites were very, very underprotected, despite the fact that individuals had been saying there was danger there and they were pleading for additional security. And the State Department, all the way up to Hillary Clinton, absolutely refused to do that. That needs to be answerable not just to the American people, but to the parents of the people whose lives were lost. The third thing we know is that night we had special ops forces that wanted to go there, could have gone there. They were told to stand down. And that's a big concern, because I spoke with someone last night who said if you watch these attacks, you have the impression from what the administration has given us that this was a huge group of people, just overwhelming force.
Right.
They said, in fact, that's not what it was at all. When you look at these tapes, it's kind of like these people coming in and that they're almost surprised that they got in. The assessment that I've been given from people was that if we'd have had just 3 more people there, these attacks could have been pushed back. It was
3 people?
That's what I was told last night. I mean, we didn't need to have a huge contingency. I mean that if we'd have flown an F-16 over there, it would have probably dispersed this, and we wouldn't have had the mortar attacks the next morning that killed some Americans. All of that, I think, is very, very concerning. The other thing, John, as you know, the newly elected Libyan president came out right after this event happened.
Right. I
believe it was on CBS News. I might be incorrect there. But he actually stated this was a terrorist attack. Then within an hour or so after that, our government was coming back and basically calling him a liar and saying that's not what happened. It was this video that was all fabricated. I mean, it just didn't exist. Well, Libya was incensed by that, as they should have been, and that's why I understand the FBI couldn't get in there for such a long period of time to do the investigation. So this thing was bungled from the very beginning, but it was actually just a weakness that was laid down before that, and we should not be like that in the United States of America. And the last thing I'll tell you, John, is the reason why. It's not just we lost these lives, that's true, but the other thing is every time we show this kind of weakness on American soil or with American representatives, it gives an incentive to other individuals to do it at later times and later places, and we just shouldn't be exposing individuals representing this country to those kind of situations.
It seems almost incredible, but do you think perhaps, to be hypothetical or to give a hypothesis for a second, that perhaps some of these pleas were denied because in a way the administration didn't want to raise the specter that might change their narrative, that kind of the war on terror was closing out?
I think it's exactly true. I mean, this is an administration with all kinds of things, whether they're dealing with competitiveness with China or whether it's terrorism, whether it's gang activity. They believe if you just don't talk about it, if you change the nomenclature, that somehow the other it goes away. And as you know, they actually took the words out of the lexicon that they could use. They couldn't even talk about war on terrorism. They wouldn't talk about terrorists. And to see this kind of activity and to see where it has taken them is just nothing short of shameful, and certainly it cost American lives in this particular situation. And then the worst thing is this: we're at a time, John, when the American people are losing credibility in their government. And when they come out and they see something like this that was so fabricated,
right,
absolutely fabricated, then they start believing or feeling that they can't believe the government anywhere when they're talking about these situations. That's a dangerous place for us to be in as a nation.
I think you hit it on the head, and that's why I think that the background check went down, because when President Obama was all mad and he said, well, it was right in the bill that said there wouldn't be universal registration. I don't think people believed it. And so I think that is one of the issues. I think you hit the nail on the head. Congressman, we only got 2 minutes. Final question. Last night, the U.S. Senate passed by a pretty wide margin a new $23 billion internet sales tax. What do you think? Do you think that's a good idea or not?
Well, two things, John. First, following up on what you just talked about saying one thing and doing another. Probably the biggest example we have of that is Obamacare. When they kept telling us it
right,
wasn't a tax, it wasn't a tax, it wasn't a tax, and as soon as it's passed, they run to the Supreme Court and say, yeah, it is a tax, so they could get it passed. I think when we look at this bill, the devil's always in the detail. We are going to begin analyzing and looking at it here. But one of the key components, John, is that it's, as I understand, a lot of the provisions are not new taxes. It's the enforcement provision that we have in existing taxes that are already out there. Mm-hmm. Many of these taxes that I understand, but now remember, the bill just passed last night, so we haven't had it over here for us to analyze it, read it, or look at it. So I'm just giving you an off-the-cuff assessment of what I understand in there, mm-hmm, from talking to some people, is that there are very many provisions in here that actually were in place. These are taxes that should have been being collected and paid. They weren't. This gives a universal mechanism to actually collect those taxes, And so with that, we'll give it a fair hearing when it comes over the air, and as soon as I've reviewed it and looked at it, I'll be glad to come back on and share with you what I think about the overall bill and the details of the bill.
All right, sir. We appreciate that. We're out of time. Republican Congressman Randy Forbes from Virginia's 4th District. Congressman, always a pleasure to have you on. Thanks for the time.
Thank you, John. Have a great day.
This is